Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. It's important to understand, I think, two things about today's readings. One, that God will never break His covenant with us, but we as humans can break our side of a covenant with God. And two, even when a covenant is broken by us, God will always accomplish His aim. So today I'm in 1 Kings 11 through 14, and this is that moment when the covenant that God made with David is broken. We go back to 1 Kings 1 through 4, and I want to refer back to when David is dying, and he takes his son Solomon aside, and he wants to impress upon him this idea of his legacy, David's legacy, and thereby Solomon's legacy. He pulls him aside and he says, look, if you keep all of God's commandments, so that God's promise to me about my house can continue, then this is something that will be in our family for generations. But you and your sons have to be really careful. It has to be, you have to follow through with our end of the bargain. And that's the only way that God's covenant will be true. God promised me that my sons will be, somebody from my house will be on the throne. And that my genetic line has importance. And He is mindful of this legacy. He's aware that it can be lost. Then again, in our reading 1 Kings 8 through 10, this comes up again after Solomon dedicates the temple. God appears. It says God appears to Solomon again. So this is a face-to-face meeting. God felt it was really important to come again and say, hey, just so you know, this is a warning. If you or yours serve other gods, I will cut off Israel from this land that I've given it, and I will cut them off from the temple that I just allowed you to build. He says Israel will become a proverb and a byword among all people, and the house that you just built will be a heap of ruins. This phrase, a proverb and a byword, really piqued my interest when I read it yesterday, and I went searching deeper, and this exact phrase is repeated 2 other times in the Bible, and the word, this byword word, is a taunt, a pointed message. So it is, he is saying here that if you don't keep the commandments, if you don't stick to your end of your side of the covenant that I made with your father, all of Israel will become a joke, something that people say as a taunt. My people will become a proverb, a pointed message, or a look what you're doing. You are acting like Israel. The fact that you didn't keep your side and lost your legacy will become an insult. So here we are in 1 Kings 11 and 14, and Solomon, who's done so well so far, he's been wise, has had a reputation of being wise because of his relationship with God. So far he had one wife that he took strategically and in accordance with God's laws, but by this point we note that he has 700 wives, and furthermore he has 300 concubines on top of that.
but it specifically mentions that he has 700 wives from the peoples that God had specifically told Israel to wipe off the map. And the reason why he didn't want Israel to intermarry or associate with these people was that he warned that the association would turn their hearts. And here Saul is trying to manage relationships with 700 wives and 300 girlfriends, which in any stretch of the imagination is going to be difficult, but it's impossible for him not to have his head turned here. And he begins to worship their gods and goddesses, and he takes the kingdom exactly where God warned him not to take. So God is angry, and he says, fine, I will tear the kingdom away from you, and I will give it to your servant. I'm not going to do it in your days, because in line with this legacy, the sins that you commit are visited on your son. Again, we've talked about this in the body. It's important for us to be thinking about our legacy, and how we act today visits on our children. So, unfortunately, David's son will be the recipient of the kingdom being torn away from them. He says, I will take all of Israel except for one tribe away from you, away from your son, because of the sake of David and Jerusalem. So again, the covenant was broken on the human side, but God still needs to, he still has a long-term vision, which will culminate in Jesus, and he's still going to accomplish that goal. So he has left one tribe to the son of Solomon. So what happens is Jeroboam is that servant that God refers to of Solomon. Jeroboam winds up taking most of Israel. They reject the house of David. So all but the house of Judah, who follows Solomon's son Rehoboam. Rehoboam, unfortunately, has not had a great example in his father. And when the people say, hey, Solomon was kind of hard on us, and we were constantly pressed into labor, forced labor, and it's too much. We need you to go lighter. Instead of listening to the wise elders, Rehoboam wants to flex. He wants to be cool with the young guys, and the young guys are all full of testosterone and say, no, you need to be mighty and strong, and so you need to tell them that you're going to be even stronger than your father. And this is how the kingdom splits. He loses Israel, all except for the house of Judah. Rehoboam then goes off and is king over Judah, and Jeroboam is king over all the rest of Israel. Jeroboam has an interesting situation here. He starts to get worried about the house of David rising again. And he doesn't have the same heart for God that Solomon used to and David always did. He's a different person. And Jeroboam worries that if he allows the people of Israel to return to the temple to worship God, that they'll remember the covenant, they'll return. And so he wants to prevent that. And he puts up his own golden calves, and he puts up his own altar. And there is this moment where God sends a holy man from Bethel and proclaims, while Jeroboam is sacrificing incense on his new altars, that a son of David will arise and sacrifice your new priest's bones on this altar. And Jeroboam reaches out his hand and points and says, seize him. And that hand shrivels up, and it's no longer a hand. And he tells the holy man, he asks him to pray to his God. Really important here. Jeroboam is not for the God of Israel. He asks that the holy man pray to his God, the God of Israel, to return his hand. And he does. But that's one of those famous moments we've got to mention. Jeroboam continues on in worshiping other gods, and he takes Israel the wrong direction, and God is now prophesying that I will shake Israel as a reed is shaken in the water. He says he will uproot Israel from the good land which he gave to their fathers, and separate them or scatter them beyond the Euphrates, because they made their Asherim, provoking the Lord to anger. He will give up Israel on account of Jeroboam and Jeroboam's sins which he committed, and made Israel to sin as well. So here in Kings we see that who we follow and whose orders we follow, if we follow them to an exception, if we follow somebody else other than God's word because they rule over us, we are just as guilty. That leader is guilty, and we are guilty. We have the ability in our free will to continue to follow God even when it puts us in peril, but Israel doesn't do that. Israel willingly follows Jeroboam and makes the same sins as him. Meanwhile, over in Judah, Rehoboam isn't any better. He reigns for 17 years in Jerusalem, and he also provokes God to anger with their high places and Asherim poles, also male cult prostitutes and abominations in the lands that God had originally purged all of that from. He brings it back. And so we wind up this reading with Jeroboam and Rehoboam fighting constantly back and forth. They're both in the wrong. They have both taken their respective parts of Israel and led them away from God. And God is not going to hold up his end of the covenant anymore. He has given up Israel, and they are now broken. They're broken away. They're not God's chosen people anymore. They lost their legacy. I think this is so, it puts me in mind of the generations that we are choosing to lose our health legacy in now. I talk a lot about the fact that what we do in our bodies have ripples. It has ripples down through 3 generations. If we carry our child, if we grow a new person in a body that is walking willfully away from God's tenets, not eating of God's creation, not living the lifestyle that he asks, not following after his heart, the child that we create in that body is corrupt. That's a harsh word, but compromised maybe is a kinder word. Compromised in health. We have already given up the legacy of perfection, of a body that is designed to heal, of a body that is not filled with degenerative disease. It is the father and the mother that choose this for the son or the daughter and then the grandchild. And it is a legacy that we do the work and hold on to for the sake of that 3rd generation out, or we sacrifice it because of our desire in the moment. Solomon sacrificed it for his desire for the flesh to have many wives and to sacrifice or to enjoy himself perhaps sexually, or the gratification of that many women loving him and maybe making him feel more secure in a human form. He sacrificed the legacy that God had promised for that momentary gratification. And we do the same. We are guilty of the same. when we are walking away from God's promises and His covenant. He makes a covenant with us that our bodies are perfectly created, that we are created in His image, and we give up that legacy then for our children and our grandchildren. I think we are going to see, mark my words, I think we are going to see God continues to affect His will to get to His aim in the end. And so we'll see that eventually David's line still does bring about Christ. So He doesn't wipe David's genetic line off the planet because the covenant is broken. But I think we're going to see that there is redemption here in Kings, that those who are in this downstream of legacy that has been broken can choose to turn and walk back to God, and the legacy can be continued again through the next few generations. We can begin to start walking back until it is broken again. So this idea that we can walk away from our legacy is something that I think we need to hold on to as we read through Kings. I pray that God is blessing you today and that He is reminding you to turn and walk back to Him as quickly and as soon as possible.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Don Combs Really.